Hello my friends, I am back with another video, lounging on the couch and just talking to you about Google Analytics and Firebase Analytics and Android applications. So this video will be a walkthrough of how to set up your own Android application using either a virtual device or your plugged-in USB Android phone. And the purpose of this video is to show you how to install Firebase in your application, how to get Firebase Analytics up and running, how to integrate Firebase Analytics into the Google Analytics UI, and finally how to install GTM as well if you want to collect to other tags as well using Google Tag Manager as the dependency. So we'll be walking through all those steps, and hopefully after watching this video and reading the accompanying article, you'll be able to add Firebase to your project yourself and thus be able to make use of the new App plus Web measurement paradigm introduced by Google a while ago. So enjoy the video and I'll see you soon in the walkthrough. We will be using Android Studio and I'll show you how to set it up to build an extremely simple demo application, which basically has nothing else than just the hello world text. So we'll actually be using the default application that Android Studio ships with when you create a new project. You will be adding things like Firebase dependencies, Google services, and we'll also add Google Tag Manager for good measure. And then you'll be able to, once you've finished, you'll be able to see your hits in the debug view. They will also be collected into the analytics dashboard at some point once they finally come through to the reports. And then you will also be able to see how those hits are being sent to Google Analytics. So you can see that there will be Google Analytics hits. We'll configure a Google Analytics tag in the container to send hits to GA when any events happen in the Android application. So this is what we'll be working on, and we'll start from scratch. So I'll just reset my environment and then we'll get started. To get started, you'll need Android Studio. So head over to developer.android.com/studio and download Android Studio for your computer. I'm going to be using the OS X version, the Mac version. So these examples will be done on a Mac computer, MacBook. They should be the equivalent if you're running this on a Windows computer or Linux computer or whatever. So once you've downloaded Android Studio, you can open it up and it will show you a screen like this. So choose to create a new Android Studio project. We'll be creating an empty activity because the whole purpose of this application is just to show you how to install Firebase. You can of course use something else, or you can integrate this into your existing app. That doesn't matter. But we'll be using empty activity just to get things started fast. Give the application a name, and it will also get a package name. You can change that if you want, but it should be something that's easy to type because you'll need to add this to a couple of places once you have Firebase and Google Tag Manager implemented. Make sure the location you're trying to add it to exists. So I'm adding it to a folder called Android Test. And this has to exist in your file system for the studio to be able to create the application folder. Keep Kotlin as the language. Check the use Android X artifacts because the current version, at the time of creating this video, the current version of Google services doesn't seem to work without these enabled. Once you're done, you can click Finish and you'll see your application being built and synchronized. So you have your Gradle files synchronized and so on. I'll tell you soon what all these things are. But this is your main view. You can switch it to the project view, which might make it easier to understand the whole thing. And now you can click the play button in the top in the header. And if you have a USB device, Android phone and a USB cable, you can add the Android phone with the USB cable to your computer, and you should see it under the connected devices. So you can essentially debug your applications on an actual Android phone. Well, I don't have an Android phone at hand right now, so I'm just going to use a virtual device. So create a new virtual device. Choose the model. Let's do a Nexus 5 for good measure. Then you'll need to choose the operating system. So just choose anyone with a pretty recent API level. It doesn't really matter because the application works on an API level of 19 plus. I'm using Pi. You'll need to download the OS if you want to create a virtual device with it. So it's a pretty hefty download, but I'm using Pi and I've already downloaded. So I'll just click next. You can give the AVD some name like Simo Demo 2 and then click finish. And it's going to create the device, and then you'll find it in the available virtual devices list. So choose the device you created and click OK. And down here in the footer of Android Studio, you'll see what it's trying to do at the moment. So currently it's loading the operating system, and it's waiting for the operating system to load, waiting for the target device to come online. And as soon as it does, it will next create and install the APK or the application package. And once the APK has been installed, it will run the application, and you should see your hello world text pop up in the phone window. If you're using a USB device, you'll see it in your phone window right now. So if you see hello world here, congratulations, you've built your first Android application. Or maybe it's not your first one, but congratulations anyway. All right, so we can now stop the emulator. And now the next thing to do is to add Firebase. So go to console.firebase.google.com. So click to create a project. Choose a name for the project. Let's go with test project. You'll see the project ID here, and this is what the cloud project will be created with, so that's okay. Set up Google Analytics for my project. Let's choose an existing Google Analytics account. So this is the account that will be created if you don't yet have a Google Analytics account. So by creating this, you're not actually creating a Google Analytics like the regular GA for web and apps that you're used to. You're actually creating a Firebase Analytics account in your GA user interface. So you're surfacing your Firebase Analytics data over there. And this is kind of part of the new app and web paradigm that Google Analytics has recently published. So anyway, let's create our project. Now you'll see the loader. So this will take a while, so grab a coffee or something while you're waiting. Right, and now it tells me my new project is ready, so click continue when you're happy with that. Next thing you need to do is add Firebase to your app. So choose the little Android dude over here. Give the package name. So the package name you'll find in your application. In the Java directory, you'll see what the package name is. So it's com.example.myTest application. This is what you'd configure when you created the project in the first place. So then let's add the my test application, app nickname, Simo's test application. This is just what the application will show up in the Firebase console as. So if you want to give it some nice nickname, you can do that. Register the application. Then it will tell me to download the config file, which is a Google Services JSON file. So download that. And then in your application, Android Studio, you'll need to add the file into the app directory. So I'll just drag and drop it from my browser to the app directory like this. So now you've added the Google Services JSON. This is just a configuration file that basically establishes the Firebase credentials for this project. So everything, all this kind of authentication stuff is done for you, which is really nice and handy. Once you've done that, click Next. Now it will tell you to add the Firebase SDK. So first of all, you'll need to find the project level build.gradle file. So this is where you'll add your project level dependencies. So you'll find it underneath your project. You open the main folder and there's a Gradle build.gradle.file. It looks like this. There are two important Gradle files in your project. The first one is the build Gradle in the project root, and the second one is the build Gradle in the application root, so in the app folder. Now you'll need to edit the project level build Gradle. There's a dependencies object here. So at the end of dependencies, you'll need to copy the class path for Google Services. And you could just keep it in its 4.2.0 version or whatever Firebase suggests for you. You don't have to upgrade it for the purposes of this, but at some point you'll want to upgrade it. Don't click the sync now yet. It doesn't make sense for now, because now you'll need to edit the application level build.gradle file, which you'll find in the app folder. And here's another dependencies block. So then you'll copy the implementation dependency and you'll add it here. Again, it's going to tell you there's a newer version. Well, you don't have to worry about that for now. And then to the bottom of the file, you need to add the plugin link like this. So now you've added your updated your dependencies to include Firebase. So now you'll need to synchronize the Gradle. So click sync now, and it should run pretty smoothly without any errors. So green check marks throughout. If you see errors, well, my suggestion is just Google those errors and see what you find, because there might be some problems. If, for example, if you try to use the latest version of Firebase, it might have conflicts with your other dependencies. So you'll need to make sure that you find a good match of versions that won't break your setups. Once you've added these, it's going to tell you need to run your application to verify installation. So you'll need to basically run the app so that it communicates with the Firebase servers and tells Firebase that everything is running. So click the play button up here, choose your virtual device, and it's going to install the latest application, load the dependencies, and run the application. And then you should see in Firebase that the application has communicated with the Firebase server. So let's see what happens. We run the application, then we go to Firebase, and now we'll just wait for this to turn into a green check mark. And here we go, congratulations, you've successfully added Firebase to your app. So then we can go to the console. And once you start using Firebase, you'll see these analytics events running under the analytics menu, but we haven't added any analytics events yet, so that's the next thing we're going to do. So now we'll need to add some code that will start collecting Firebase Analytics events. So the first thing you'll need to do is find your main activity. You'll find it in your application deep in the root or deep inside the folder structure, but it's basically under the application src main Java and then your application. You can quickly find it if you choose Android over here. It's a bit faster to find it like that. So this is your main activity, and this represents the in Android you're using activities. So activities basically represent different types of views and different types of things that can be done on the application. So the main activity is what's run when the application is first executed, and this is where you'll need to initialize your Firebase installation as well. So we'll start by creating a variable for the Firebase instance, like this, Firebase Analytics. And then you want to load the Firebase Analytics dependency. So once you start typing, it will give you a list of all the Firebase Analytics items. So click the tab key once you have Firebase Analytics selected from this list, because that will automatically add the dependency as an import statement. It's a really nice feature of Android Studio. So once you've initialized this, you're using the late init because this is basically a constructor pattern in Kotlin, but you don't yet have Firebase Analytics dependency loaded that you could initialize this with. So you're using the late init to tell Kotlin that, hey, I'm going to initialize this variable a bit later, but I want to use it on the activity level. So then inside your onCreate method, you'll just add a little room here. So here we'll actually initialize it. So we'll take the Firebase Analytics and tell that let's initialize it as an instance of the Firebase Analytics. Let's create a singleton with the get instance, and the context is basically this. So that you're passing the context of the main activity of the application to the Firebase Analytics. This is how you initialize Firebase Analytics. You don't have to worry about it too much. And then what we can do is we can actually just send a custom event. So let's send a custom kind of screen view event. So let's when you want to send an event, you'll basically do a Firebase Analytics.log event. It will take the event name as the first parameter, and you can actually use an enumerated item for this. So under Firebase Analytics, you'll have the param property. And under param, you'll have all these built-in event names. So let's choose select content. Sorry, I'm in the wrong place. So you'll need to use another enum, which is the event, not the param. So we'll use event, which is a list of all the event names that you have access to, the kind of standard event name. So let's choose select content as the event name. And then it takes a parameter list as the second parameter. So let's create a parameter. We'll use Android's own bundle, which is basically just a list of items, key value pairs, like a plain object in JavaScript. We'll put some items into it. So put string is what we'll use. And now it takes the key name as the first item. So this would be this could be something like my parameter, but we can again use the default parameters. So now we'll look for Firebase Analytics dot param, and let's do item ID. And we can set this to some test, for example. And then we'll pass that as the second parameter of the log event call. So now we're logging an event with the name select content and with a bundle of key value pairs where there's just a single key item ID and value some test. Now to see what happens in Firebase, you'll need to add some logging. So we'll need to load some logging capabilities in Firebase, and I'll show you how to do that. So go to firebase.google.com/docs-analytics-android-start. So just look for like the Firebase getting started guide for Android, and then copy these 3 commands that you see over here. Then in Android, open the terminal. So click the terminal down here in Android Studio, and just paste the commands here. Oh yeah, you'll need to actually run your emulator first. So let's run this application in an emulator. So click the play button again and choose your emulator once you've added Firebase to the application. And now you can add those commands and press enter. And now you'll see this is basically a log of the Firebase tasks that are being sent to Firebase. So now you can see that there's an event recorded with the name select content. So that's our event with some parameters, which is a bundle with item ID equals some test. So this is how Firebase basically works. There's some automatic screen view tracking going on as well. So Firebase actually automatically tracks the screen view. And you'll find these in the stream view of your Firebase. So you should be able to see your item here, item over here in the stream view. So this is how you'll be able to check how these. So you'll be able to verify that everything is working by checking the stream view for your project. But then we might want to see it in the debug view as well. So you need to actually configure your device, your virtual device, as a debug device. You need to tell Android that, hey, this device is allowed to send debug hits. So for that, we'll need to find a way to do debugging. So you can actually find it in the same instructions, enabling debug mode. So just copy this line, and then in the Android shell, so you can actually stop this with Control C. That will halt the debugging. You can do adb shell. You can paste the command here, and instead of package name, you'll type your package name. So com example my test application. So now you've registered your virtual device, which is running here in the background. You've registered this as a debug device. So now when you run the application, I'll just reset it. And you can run this logcat line again. So logcat -v time -s fa svc. Your application is now running over here. There's going to be some debug data as well, but now you'll be able to find your application data in the debug view as well. So here's your virtual device sending these hits, and you can see your select content with the item ID of some test. So this is how you run Firebase Analytics through your app. And from this, it just gets more, you can get as complicated as you want. You can start creating your own modules, create your own complicated Firebase Analytics stuff. It's a good idea to just keep tabs on the Firebase Analytics documentation, which is pretty solid. Obviously, a lot of stuff missing as usual, but you can always find your Firebase Analytics itself is pretty rudimentary at the moment, so there's not that much to even document. but you can find how to set things like user properties and so on. But the way in Android that things work is you create this instance, or you get an instance of the Firebase Analytics singleton, and you start using it to sending events. So you can load the Firebase in other activities as well by remembering to initialize it with the current instance, with the current context of the application, and then you just run these log event commands, sending a bundle as parameters. So what if we want to add Google Tag Manager to our Android Firebase application next? So we might want to use GTM to send some data to Google Analytics as well, or maybe use some other tags in GTM for Firebase. So next thing you'll need to do is head on over to Google Tag Manager and create a new container. Let's do my test application again. Choose Android as the container type, and then create a new container. Let's create a new tag here as well. So choose a tag, create Google Analytics Universal Analytics. Keep screen view as it. No, actually, let's send an event. Test event. Test category. Now we can add as the action. Let's add our item ID. So I want to fire this tag when the select content event fires. So let's put our item ID over here. So parameter item ID, event parameter, and then you'll just look for the event parameter in the suggested events list. There's an item ID over here, so we'll use that one. And that should be now sent as the action of the hit. And then just choose a tracking ID. I'll choose my all-time favorite one. And then we can create an event for Firebase, which would be a custom event because there's no event for select content over here. And I can actually just have this fire on all events just for good measure, which doesn't make sense because there actually is an all events trigger here. So let's just use that one instead. So we'll just have this fire on all events just so that I can show you how the GTM stuff works. So once you're done, save the tag, publish the workspace or the container, and then it's going to give you a download link here. So click download to download this container, and it's going to be a JSON file like this. So the next thing is really important. You need to add this container to the correct. So you'll need to add a new directory under your main folder. So right click and click new. If it doesn't already exist, that means. So the directory name is assets. Under assets, you'll create one more directory called containers. And then you'll drag the container JSON to that containers folder. And now you can test the application again. So let's see if it manages to download. One thing that we forgot to do is we need to actually load Google Tag Manager as a dependency. So we need to edit our Gradle file again. So go to your app build.gradle, and down here add implementation, com, Google, Android, GMS, Play Services, Tag Manager, and then 17.0.0. So you might want to make sure that it matches the Firebase core, just so that they don't go out of sync. Then you can just sync the Gradle file. So that's done now. And now, once you've added the GTM dependency to Android Studio, now you can click to play the. And now you can open the terminal, or actually you can open the logcat file. So logcat is basically a log of all your events running in Firebase. So you can look for Google Tag Manager here, and you should see the following lines. It's loading the container, it's installing event handlers, and so on. So then it says that something is happening. So we'll need to see if it actually sends anything to Analytics. So you'll see that Google Analytics is starting up. Then it tells you that, hey, the set logger is deprecated. To enable debug logging, please run this ADB command. So copy this command over here, go to terminal, and paste it here. So now we've enabled Google Analytics logging for our app. So now we can just actually rerun the application. You'll see that some hits have been sent to the analytics service for delivery. So let's see if we can, looking for your UAID, you'll see that a hit delivery has been requested with the application name test application. There's the event, so test category, some test, which is your value of your item ID parameter, if you remember, non-interaction false, UA12345-1, and so on. And actually, just to clarify, so the 2 times that it runs is that because I had every event. I had the GA tag firing for all events. There's actually 3 Firebase events that take place. There's the screen view event, and there's, I think, the first open or user engagement or something like this. So the tag has actually fired 3 times, but it's only fired once for the log event command, because that's the only place where we have the item ID included. So these values don't persist from one event to the other. If you want to have item ID in your events, you have to have it in every single one of your log event calls. If you want things to persist, you'll actually have to use user properties. So anyway, now we can see that the Google Analytics is working as well. I don't have access to this UA12345-1, so I can't show you, but you can just trust that it is actually working as it should. So we're about done here. We've created our Android application. It's running in our virtual device. It's sending data to Firebase Analytics, and it's sending data to Google Analytics using Google Tag Manager. We've installed all the dependencies, and now it's just up to you how to keep on building this application, upgrading it to an App Plus Web property, and just combining all this stuff, and just doing good analytics for your mobile applications. Thank you very much for your attention.